Welcome to the commentary video of Ecclesiastes chapters 1 through 4. Now, I've already explained this in the reading video, but Ecclesiastes was believed to be written by King Solomon. And King Solomon was the son of King David, the king of Israel. And he took over the throne from David at a very young age, and he didn't know what to do. God came to him as he sacrificed to him and asked, "What can I do for you?" And instead of asking for riches, power, and prosperity, Solomon asked for wisdom. And God was so pleased that he gave Solomon wisdom, but also everything else. All the women in the world, the clout, the power, the wealth. Solomon was the richest king for his time and the times before him. And I believe, based off of what he did in the book of Ecclesiastes, where he saturated himself with all the pleasures of the world, did he gain additional wisdom than what God just downloaded into his brain. And that can speak to a lot of people who have saturated their lives in sin and have found nothing but emptiness and brokenness, depression and anxiety, and a will to not live anymore. If that's you, there is hope for you. But let's get into the text and see what this man who has experienced everything that he could possibly want has to say. Solomon uses this phrase a lot, vanity of vanities, and then striving after wind. And I defined this a bit in the reading video. Vanity means worthlessness. There's no point to it. And chasing after wind means you're working hard for nothing. There's no payoff. So he identifies himself here in verse 1 and says, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. That very much points to Solomon. And now he's lamenting. Worthlessness of worthlessness, everything is worthless. This is the mind of a man who saturated his life in sin and found that nothing could fulfill him. What does a man gain by working at which he works under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. What does that mean? You can work really hard to build up a nest egg and build up glory for yourself, but you will pass away. That means you could work all you want for your glory and for people to remember your name. But after you're long gone, life goes on, you're done, and people won't remember you. Skipping down to verse 11, he says, there is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. Sure, in our time, we have more ability to keep records, and so we can remember names for longer, but that's short-lived. If you're driven by legacy, your name will be forgotten within a few generations. And if it stands the test of time, when they find out what you're really like, they will hate you. So what are you working really hard for? These verses show that life will just go on without you. The sun's going to rise, the sun's going to go down. Life doesn't need you. All these things that you're chasing doesn't matter as much as you think it does. By the time you get to the end of it, you realize it was all for nothing. One of my favorite actors and comedians growing up was Jim Carrey. And a few years ago, he came out and he said, I've had everything. I have had fame, I've had riches, and I realized that none of it matters. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. But he realized that the things that he chased in his youth was worthless because he's still not satisfied on the inside. And it's crazy to see a guy who is responsible for like 50% of my laughs in my childhood sounds so depressing. But he gets it. He understands it. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot speak about it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ears filled with hearing. You're worried about everything in this world. You learn to hate everything of this world because all you see is pain, agony, and fear. But we're not reinventing anything here. There's nothing new under the sun. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. People back then sinned just like people today. People back then loved whoever they wanted just like people today. People back then worked. People today work. People back then ate, slept, and went to the bathroom. Same with everyone now. As much as our culture likes to act like we've progressed, there's nothing new. We're still fighting the same arguments that people have had 2,000 years ago. 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago. There's no such thing as progressiveness. Sure, technology has changed, and all that means is We're all fighting the same battles using different tools, but it's still the same struggle. So let's talk about the worthlessness of wisdom. Why does Solomon say it's worthless to be super wise? He says, I applied my heart to seek and search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, it's all worthlessness and a striving after nothing. Why does he say that? Because when you choose to be the wisest person in the world, you know how great humanity can be, but you also know the depths of depravity that mankind can stoop to. And for me, the depths of it was increased when parts of the files were released and I saw just how wicked some people in this world are. It didn't take much for me to theoretically believe that people are evil, and I've seen a lot of wickedness, but there's a deeper level that I would not go to, that people brag about going to. And as wise and as much of a thinker as I am, part of me wishes I was still ignorant to that. But my eyes have been opened. I want to shut it again because it's just so ugly to think about. That's what Solomon is talking about here. That's why he ends the chapter with, for in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. Now this is all of you, people who want self-indulgence, right? Whether it's alcohol, partying, friends, how many people you've slept with, how many drugs you take. Solomon says, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, it's all worthlessness. I said of laughter, it is mad. So he filled himself with things that made him laugh, but it doesn't matter. And of pleasure, what use is it? You feel good for a little bit, your brain builds a tolerance to it, you try to do more, maybe it doesn't hit the same. You seek to increase, and if it's drugs, you might overdose. With alcohol, you might get poisoned. He said, I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay a hold on foolishness till I might see what is good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and vineyards and gardens and parks and trees. I made pools to water them. I had servants and slaves. I had herds and flocks. I had all these riches that I could possibly enjoy. I had singers. I had concubines. Everything that you could delight in. He said, I became so great that my wealth surpassed everyone who was before me. And even in my wisdom and whatever I didn't keep from my eyes, whatever pleasure I didn't pursue in my heart. And then he says, it was all worthlessness and striving after wind. There was nothing to be gained under the sun. So if that's you want to live a comfortable life in a nice big house, have a bunch of kids that drive you crazy, stress about work all day, stress about family issues. If you have everything that you want, do you truly believe that you'll be happy? If you won the Powerball and got to buy whatever you wanted, how do you think you're going to react when you realize that you're still going to be the same miserable, depressed, anxious person as you were when you had none of that? What is there to live for? Tell me. If people who have had the things that you've had before find nothing but depression, what makes you think that you're that different? In which case, why do you think those things that fulfill you is better than God, when that void inside of you is a God-sized void that only He can fulfill? Just think about that. Let's talk about living wise versus living foolishly. He said, so I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly, for what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what's already been done. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in foolishness, as there is more gain in light than in darkness. A wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceived that at the same time, the same event happens to all of them. We're all going to pass away. So whether you live your life as a dumb person or live your life as a smart person, you still will eat, sleep, work, maybe, breathe, and pass away, all the same. The journey that you go on will look different, but in the end, who cares? No one's going to remember you, so why do you try so hard to chase after things that are worthless? Please, as a human being who loves to be with smart people, I would prefer that everyone be wise. Make better decisions. Take accountability for your poor decision making, because society will be better when there are more smart people acting wisely than there are dumb people posting on the internet. But at the end of the day, we will all live, breathe, and die. Solomon says, "Why then have I been so wise? As I said in my heart, that this is also worthlessness. For the wise as of the fool, there is no enduring remembrance. Seeing in the days that will come, all will have long been forgotten. How the wise just perishes, just like the fool. So I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me, for all is vanity and striving after wind." So you want to work hard and ignore your family so that you could build a nest egg. You want to build generational wealth so that your family can be okay once you've croaked. Solomon says, "I hated all my toil in which I toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is worthlessness." I see a lot of people who have done great things and have amassed great wealth, and their kids are far less impressive. I'm putting that nicely. To the workaholics who want to spend all their day working and not enjoying their life, spending time with their wife, spending time with their kids, and cherishing every moment, I say to you, your wealth that you accumulate, you don't get to enjoy. It is much better to be a child of a billionaire than to be the actual billionaire, because as a child of a billionaire, you get to go on vacation. You get to go and drive the nice cars and have relations with the best looking people and eat the best food, while your parents are working their butts off trying to run corporations and companies to keep your lifestyle going. But to the people who are working, honestly, what's the point? And I see some billionaires, they're giving their wealth away and cutting their kids off because they want their kids to grow with that work ethic. Well, then what was all of your toil for? It's worthless. How is that better than living with God's grace and love, having peace and joy, enjoying what he has for you? Solomon says, "So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This is also vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This also is vanity." Exactly what I just said about the billionaires. So what does God have for you in this world? If all of those things mean nothing, what does God want for you in this life that means something? Solomon says, "There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his work. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting for the ones who please God." So what does Solomon mean when he says there's nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil? Well, toil here doesn't just mean work. Sure, if you have a career, try to find enjoyment in where you're at now. Do the best you can for the glory of God. But work is also being a good husband or wife, being a good parent to your kids. Just stopping and enjoying the time that you have with them now, because the times will change. They will grow older, and you will miss those days when you wish that they weren't just all up on you and you're just overstimulated. They're not going to want to be around you anymore, and you're going to miss it. So just try to stay present. Enjoy your wife, enjoy your husband, enjoy your family, and don't work so hard where you're missing out. That is how you can love your family, to spend time with them. Make time to enjoy their presence and whatever y'all do together. And if not, you're going to be working hard, but your managers and your VPs are going to go on vacation with their kids and have a great time while you're stuck in the office working to create value for them to do what they want to do. Life is not linear, and life is generally not permanent. It's fluid. And you need to understand that some things that you do, maybe it's not a sin, maybe it is lawful, but the timing is wrong. And you don't get credit for the right things that you did in the wrong time, because that could be wrong as well. For example, it's good to help people by preaching the gospel to them. But when you're at church and the pastor is giving a sermon, it is not the right time to turn to your neighbor and share the gospel with them and talk over what the pastor's saying. That's a time to sit and listen, and then you can talk after. Here, Solomon is understanding that, and he's saying there's a time for everything. A time to be born, a time to perish, a time to plant, a time to harvest, a time to unalive, and a time to heal. Why does he say a time to unalive? Because people fought wars back then in order to maintain their territory. Some people do now as well. You might not be enlisted in the military, but there's a time for everything. There's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones. What does that mean? You can use that as it's a time to accumulate stuff and a time to let things go, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to embrace and a time to not brace, a time to hug and a time not to hug, a time to keep silent and a time to speak. Emphasize on that verse. Sometimes it's better for you to keep your mouth shut and listen than to talk. And you might turn this back on me and say, well, you're talking, you should take your own advice. I don't want to do this. I'd rather just show up to a job and work and not have to make YouTube videos. This does not make me comfortable at all. But I'm doing God's work because this is where he's got me. This is the time for me to make these videos for you, for all 5 of you who watch the videos. I believe the correct phrase that you should say to me is, thank you. A time to love and a time to hate. Here's the thing about Christianity. Remember, King Solomon was a Jew under Judaism prior to Christ. As a Christian, we should not hate people. We should hate evil. You separate the person from the sins because God came to save sinners. It is not our place to say, you're a sinner, therefore you're yucky to me, get away from me. That is not the heart of Christ. The heart of Christ is, you're dirty, come here, I'll help clean you up, but I don't enjoy the things that you're doing. Just like I say to my 3-year-old son, I love you, I don't like your behavior right now. So the proper application of verse 8 for Christians is, the time to love everyone is always, the time to hate sin and wickedness, especially our own, is always. And we help each other get better. What does Solomon talk about as the God-given task here? He says, what gain has the worker from his toil? I have seen the business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat, drink, and take pleasure in all of his toil. This is God's gift to man. So what does Solomon say that God wants us to do? He wants us to do good and to enjoy what we're doing and to eat and drink and take pleasure with our spouses and our families. What God does, it endures forever. We can't add any more to it or take anything away from it. God has done it. That which has already been done has already been. That which is to happen has already been determined. God seeks what has been driven away. Pairing that with there's nothing new under the sun, you understand. There are no new sins. There are no new levels of depravity, only what we have experienced in our lives and what we can learn from what other people are doing that are more depraved than us. But God knows how broken and fallen we are, and he seeks to get us back, to win us back into his love, and that is how he operates in our world today. Solomon says, moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, that is the courts, there was wickedness. Yeah, and in the place of righteousness, even there was wickedness. Right? Churches, for example, a place where you're supposed to learn in Jesus and grow, there are wicked people there. Sometimes they are the leaders of the church. Please leave. Well, what does Solomon say? I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for every matter and for every work. I said in my heart with regard to the children of man that God is testing them, that they may see that they themselves are but beasts. For what happens to the children of man and what happens to the beasts is the same. As one perishes, so does the other. They all have the same breath, and man has no advantage over the beasts, for all is vanity. Don't be confused with having dominion over the beasts. We are all flesh and blood. I started watching The Boys, and there was a line that was interesting to me. I think it was Homelander who said it. We're all just balloons with bone and flesh and blood in it. We all struggle in this world, and God uses sin to test us and strengthen us in righteousness. If you're tempted by the sin, do you then exercise self-control and thus strengthen your self-control, like strengthening a muscle in the gym by adding on more weight or more reps? Or do you give in and therefore make your self-control weaker, make your faith and devotion weaker? The times when you struggle is the time when you can grow the most in faith. But Solomon here is saying, we will live and we will perish. Don't bother trying to discern whether someone is worthy of going to heaven or if they're going to hell. You don't know. And that's in verse 21 here. So in verse 22, Solomon says, I saw that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his work, for that is his portion. Who can bring him to see what will be after him? Nobody. We have no idea where we're going. I can give you a spoiler alert. If you truly follow Christ faithfully your entire life and exercise self-control over your sin, he will welcome you into paradise. If not, you might not be there. Again, Solomon is operating in a time before Jesus Christ himself. Now, Solomon is speaking about unrighteousness and injustice. Again, I saw all the oppressions that are done under the sun, and behold, the tears of the oppressed, and they had no one to comfort them. On the side of their oppressors was power, and there was no one to comfort them. What does that mean? That means whether you have the power to oppress or if you are the oppressed, you're all miserable. We are all miserable people. So Solomon says, and I thought the dead who are already dead more fortunate than the living who are still alive. But better than all of them are the ones who haven't been born yet and seen the evil deeds of this world. There's no happiness in this world. There's fleeting moments here and there. But at the end of the day, for most of us, after we leave a fun comedy show or music concert, we go back to our apartments or our homes where we have to pay a lot of money to keep above our heads. We work jobs with people that we don't like and with overbearing management so that we can get a check every 2 weeks, hopefully feed ourselves, drink our sorrows away, and pay rent to someone who owns our property, whether it's the bank or a landlord, just to continue existing. And living in Boston, I understood this because Boston was so expensive that there was no way that I could possibly save up money for a down payment for a house that was always escalating in price. I could never reach that 20%. And so I had to endure 30 to 45 minutes of miserable commute in the cold, taking the train in to a city, getting into the office, listening to my coworkers' BS and water cooler talks, dealing with people who have been there for 30 years, breathing down my neck because they're saying, well, we have to do it this way because that's how we've always done it, when they couldn't even turn a computer on. And then after work, go drink with my friends where we get drunk and complain about all the crazy people we work with, stumble on home, microwave a pre-made dinner, go to the gym, then go home and sleep, maybe in the arms of a nice lady or not, and wake up early to do it all over again. There's no fun in that. It's just misery and struggle. So who cares? Honestly, why do you want to work and not have any enjoyment of this life that you have? There's a better way, God's way, and He can lead you to a better job or a better career that gives you some flexibility. Maybe you have to move and leave the area that you're in, but you can be surrounded by people who don't rile you up and make you feel miserable. I experienced that with the first church where I got saved at. I'm experiencing that now in the city that I currently live in. I'm not nearly as stressed out as I used to be. I have a family that I get to enjoy. I worked for employers that understood family first, and we didn't work 80 hours a week. But some of you aren't going to listen to me. You're not going to give that up. Why? Solomon here says, then I saw all the toil and all the skill and work come from a man's envy of his neighbor. This is the keeping up with the Joneses mentality. He says, this is also worthless and chasing after nothing. The fool folds his hands and eats his own flesh. What does that mean? He's consumed by all this work to achieve nothing, no payoff emotionally. You might have more things, but you're not going to find happiness in it. You've put stress in your flesh trying to achieve false glory. Solomon says, better is a handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil and striving after the wind. Sometimes you just need to take a chill pill. Sit back, relax. If someone got a nice new Burberry scarf, you don't need a new Burberry scarf. It's fine. No one's judging you anyways. You're judging yourself. Complaining to God, oh, why don't I have the finest things in this world? When you're not even capable of enjoying the good things that He has given you. Why would He give you more? Again, I saw vanity under the sun. A person who has no other, that's no wife, no kid, no family, just alone. They're never satisfied with riches, and they work really hard to give none of these things away. They're just unhappy all the time. There's no achieving of anything. So why work so hard for no reason if you have no one to enjoy it with? I've seen people who don't make a lot of money. They're married, have kids, and own their house, whether it was given to them, I don't know. But they're happier than the people I know who are drinking. It's the afternoon right now. I know someone's at the bar drinking their sorrows away, and they don't have anyone to go home to. Or maybe they don't want to go to the people they have at home. Solomon says that there's strength in numbers. 2 are better than 1. If one falls, the other will lift him up. If 2 people lie together, they can keep warm. If you're just by yourself, you're not going to be able to stay warm. If people attack you, a man might be able to handle himself, but 2 people will help withstand the attack, and 3 people cannot be easily defeated. Enjoy the company that you have around yourself. And to finish this up, Solomon says, better was a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king who no longer knew how to take advice. When you think that you're so set in your ways that you don't want to seek good advice from people anymore, you're a fool. You're an idiot. And it's better for someone to have none of the clout but has wisdom than to have authority and act foolishly. Solomon says, I saw all the living who move about under the sun, along with that youth who was to stand in the king's place. He's talking about himself. There was no end of all the people, of all whom he led. Yet those who come later will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and striving after wind. What does that mean? Solomon is this king. He's getting older, and he will depart from the Lord. And he says, having clout but no wisdom to supervise people underneath you and being a bad manager is foolishness. And the work will never end, but no one's going to like you. No one's going to remember you. They hate your company. So if you're a supervisor or a manager and you're not leading effectively, do better. So let me ask you again, what do you think is the most important thing in your life? What are you chasing after for fulfillment? Because Solomon has shown that whatever you pursue outside of God, it means nothing. You will live, you will die. You may go to hell. You might go to heaven if you're faithful to Jesus Christ. So let me ask you something. What is the most important thing in this world to you that you're working really hard for? Because chances are, it's not going to be as fulfilling when you achieve it as you think it is. And it's certainly not going to be long lasting. What's keeping you from following God where you can find everlasting joy? Is it your church hurt? Maybe, but there's always time to heal from that. Is it the fact that you think you're too smart for God? That's false. Most of the people I see who follow God don't even understand Scripture, let alone someone who doesn't follow God. Most people take verses out of context and prejudge God before they read Scripture. So they always get it wrong. You do too, probably. And Solomon says, whether you're super wise or super not wise, we will live, we will eat, we will breathe, we will love, and we will die. It all happens to us. So what is there to live for? Do you want riches? You're working really hard. Maybe you have it. Awesome. What will you have when you pass away? None of it. What will you work for your entire life if you don't have it? And you're faced with the failure and feeling worthless. Will you hate yourself? Most people do. Drown yourself in alcohol, drugs, OD maybe. Drown yourself in the comfort of people who you use and use you, and when they leave your life, you feel worthless and rejected again. I promise you, there's no joy in that. Is it through having marriage and kids? I can promise you, those things are a lot of work. You get fleeting moments of joy, but most of the time, you're just trying to stay afloat. Juggling work, being a good spouse, being a good parent. Some days you might not be a good parent or spouse, and then you feel really bad. Is that going to fulfill you? I don't think it will, not in the long term. Maybe it's driving nice cars and having nice houses. I've had both. A car is a car, whether I've driven a BMW or a Toyota, Honda, or Nissan. It gets you from point A to point B. There's no point in buying a nice looking car because you're going to spend most of your time inside of it anyways. And sure, you could walk around with a big ego and think you're better than other people, but the same thing that's going to happen to them is going to happen to you. And that feeling of superiority is just temporary. You could lose everything in an instant. I know plenty of people, myself including, lost their jobs to AI. Didn't see that coming. I have a nice house right now. It's big and it's a pain in the butt to clean. And by no means am I complaining about living in a nice house, but I also grew up poor and I lived in a smaller house or an apartment. A place to live is just a place to live. What about all those people you claim to love relationally? Has anyone ever lied to you just to get a little bit of action, and then when you have consummated the relationship, they leave you, ghost you? You go on those apps and you text someone and wonder why they're not texting you back anymore because they ghosted you and now you feel worthless, like no one will ever love you. How about those of you who are good looking and you've had 4 soulmates this year for about 3 months, and then you complain online about how all men are bad or all women are problems, and what you believed to be fulfilling for you became a huge disappointment? I've been there. I've been through all of these things, and I can honestly tell you that Solomon is right. The only thing that we can truly enjoy is being in the moment, connecting with God, and enjoying our work, our families, our food, and our drink. And by drink, I believe Solomon means alcohol as well. The gifts of God are generally not the most lavish things. He gives us salvation, He gives us love, peace, and joy. And that's often found in the simplicity of life, not the materialism and the grand gestures of power and ego. If you can understand that, then I hope and pray that you do repent of your sins, choose to follow Jesus today, and start putting your effort and energy into the things that will satisfy you, instead of the things that seem nice but won't. That's it. Ecclesiastes chapters 1 through 4, done. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in Ecclesiastes 5 through 8.